Wow. Mark Gazit, thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's such a great pleasure.
We've been knowing each other now for a while, and we're getting to know each other better every day. I'm really excited to dive deep with you into many different topics, from your background to cybersecurity to what you've been doing since the telecommunication space, and one of the pioneers here in the Israeli ecosystem, and then in the US, and as an entrepreneur, as a manager, all the way to how we see the future.
Sounds
And
great. Looking forward to it.
so, are you an entrepreneur? Are you an executive, a manager?
So it's amazing, you straight on asking probably the most difficult question for me, because everybody says I am an entrepreneur, and the only person that says I'm not an entrepreneur is me, because I think that what I bring is leadership and management, is the how to. I don't think that God really gave me the present of reinventing the future. But the present I got is when somebody comes with a great idea how to reinvent the future, I have an ability to help that person to make it happen. So it's funny. I've done 5 companies so far. None of them were companies that I came with an idea.
Hmm.
And all
None of
those
them.
companies, none of them. Actually, all those companies were companies where I came because somebody invited me and then helped to scale up the company, grow it. So maybe in a way, maybe I'm an entrepreneur because when I see a great idea, technology, something that has the potential to change the world, I can see how it might happen. But I'm not the one that will come with a great idea, and I will be more the one that will take a great idea and make it a reality.
So you treat that as a present that you got. You're looking at it as sort of that you have you're looking at what are your superpowers, what are you better at, what are you worse at. I'm sure you have amazing ideas. We talk about ideas all the time, and you have fantastic ideas. Yet you make the distinction that when it comes to the companies you've built and have grown, the idea didn't necessarily come from you.
Absolutely. The idea usually doesn't come from me. I have a theory. I don't know if it's the right theory, but if you really want to be creative, you should be free from the hassles of how to make it happen. Because once you say, okay, what do I need to do to make it happen? It immediately limits your sort of view. There's like a rule number 1 of brainstorming is let's throw all the ideas, even the ideas that are totally impossible. And my motto is making the impossible possible, which by definition will not allow me to come with the greatest, craziest ideas. The good news is that my gift is meeting great people, working with great people that came with great ideas, and then together, in one capacity or another, we make these ideas become a reality. And when it becomes a reality, that's the amazing thing.
But what goes through your mind then? So you have you meet some people, and you see a great idea, you perhaps see a great team that's coming there. How do you decide for yourself whether you're going to devote the next, I don't know, 5-10 years to this idea? Because you've done it multiple times now, so there must be some pattern that goes through that helps you make that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought about it. So I had a privilege I spent 7.5 years in the Israeli Air Force. And I had a privilege to be the one that sort of brought, the time it was called DARPANET, to Israel. And I saw that this technology that became an internet was something that was truly exciting. It erased distances. And so I really felt that it should be something that the world will accept. And then when the internet started to be a reality, or almost a reality, I told myself, look, this technology is totally bypassing the telecommunication obstacles. This technology is something that is extremely powerful. This technology has been proven in the world of defense, because for people who remember how internet started long time ago, it was developed as a fail-safe solution to make military defense communication. So I said, one way or another, the world needs it. It's proven, so it should become a reality. That time was young, stupid, so I was lucky because it did become a reality. And then obviously all my companies that I built then were based on the fact that I could see a technology that was proven, if it's in defense world, it's great, but if not in other places, that's solving a really painful problem. So yes, indeed, I sort of developed a process, a mental process, how to find out if the technology is interesting, if it's breakthrough, if the world really needs it, and if it's feasible. And so far, thank God, it works well for me.
So take me back to those early days of the internet, right? DARPANET is coming. You're spending 7.5 years in the Israeli Air Force. What's happening? What is the situation like? You're seeing a technology that seems to come from the military perspective with incentives for military operations, but you're saying, well, this is actually a reality that everybody needs, right? What would you experience and what did you see for the future?
So I see this amazing technology that allows you to be in one place and allow things happen in another place. If the story of internet is true, it was basically developed to allow, somebody in the White House to press a red button and then make sure that the communication will get to the necessary place and it will be safe, etc. Today it's obvious, but that time it was like a genius idea. So if we'll make, not a direct connection, but we'll make like two connections that will be fail safe, it will work. Anyway, I became excited. Like it's an idea. It's like this is a real scale. We are in Israel, a very remote country. Suddenly you press a button and something happens like on the other side of the ocean. It was very exciting. Of course, there were many other technologies. And then when I finished the military, I started working with companies like Intel and Microsoft, etc. And I see that everybody's talking about the fact that we need a new way of communication. I remember a person approaching me and saying, like, we invested money in what we call internet service provider. We want to bring internet to Israel. It doesn't really work. Can you help us? And that time I worked with Microsoft, basically, to show that Microsoft is safer than that time was something that was called Linux or Unix when it comes to communication. So I say, okay, let's try. I start to work with that company and suddenly everything is working and people like it. And then I discuss it with my mentor, the late Uzziah Galil, who built Elbit, etc. I was his customer. And he tells me, look, my daughter is doing the same. And then we merge the companies, and eventually that's how NetVision starts. Since then, Ruth Alon, she was the real founder. She was the real visionary. She is the real visionary, and she is my best friend and my mentor on how to be a leader and bringing soft leadership skills.
Why?
She's amazing.
What was about her leadership that really inspired you?
It will be politically incorrect to call it sort of a female leadership style, but I love it. I think that women are much better leaders than men. I have 3 daughters. And today I think it's a bon ton, but this was a compassionate leadership. It was a leadership of understanding. It was a leadership of enrolling people to do something versus forcing them to do something. And for me, coming that time from the military, it was a different leadership style, and I fell in love with this leadership. She became the first lady of the internet here in Israel. The company became the largest by far. It was a really good success. It still exists. Now the name is Cellcom. I did through a few mergers and reverse mergers, etc. But it was amazing. I'm not sure that all the people who watch this podcast will get it, but Israelis couldn't even pronounce internet. They used to say interten, which in Hebrew sounds much better. It's like, give me internet, ten is give me. And it was so funny, and people told me it will never work, it's crazy. Some people told me nobody will need it. Other people told me people will need it so much that the infrastructure will just collapse. Which for me, by the way, usually today I know is a symbol of something that will become a reality and will become successful. So we're building this company.
What is the symbol for For what is the sort of the trigger that leads you to believe that something will become a reality?
When people say we desperately need it, but it will never work because it will just not keep up to the load. This is the first indicator. And the second indicator, when people say, look, it's so crazy that it will never work and nobody will use it. Think about AI today. Now it's easy, but, and I'm sort of jumping, from one place to another. But 10 years ago, when I joined Professor Koefman, Professor Averbuch, to do theta array, people said AI will never be able to replace human beings. Nobody will be as smart as human beings. So that was like 50% of the people. And another 50%
I think
of the
3
people.
years ago, that's what people
Even
said.
3 years ago, exactly. And then the other 50% said, look, AI will be so powerful. This, the singularity moment will come so fast that will totally ruin the humanity.
That we hear quite often today.
Absolutely, and we'll discuss it. We have. I would love to give you my point of view, but it happens all the time. Like after NetVision, I joined Delta 3. This is the company that brought voice over IP. I think it was the first publicly traded voice over IP company. With the IPO was on Nasdaq, and I remember when we were trying our solutions, we were sitting in the airport. I did it with Noam Bardin, who later sold Waze to Google. And I remember we were sitting in the airport, talking to a computer, basically communicating with each other, bypassing, the telecommunication networks. And people told us, look, are you crazy? Like, nobody will talk to a computer. It will never happen. Think about Zoom and all those technologies we're using currently. So, I found that really cool technologies, when you catch them at the right phase and they become reality, it's a really, really nice run. Now, I tried not to be on the bleeding edge. So I try to not touch those technologies when they're too early, but definitely to be on the leading edge. Because you have then you have an advantage of early mover.
It reminds me a little bit of the phase in which theta array exists in, right? I mean, I'm looking at theta array, it's 10 years old, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at 2013, 2014, and I'm looking at where AI was. I was just starting to look into AI myself. I was just finishing my 12 years of initial studies and before the military, and banking systems were definitely starting to become digital. You were starting to do more and more operations digitally. This is almost a decade after the first smartphones coming out, and you sort of have this realization, perhaps not the original vision, but you come in to lead the company, looking at how do you use leading technology to be able to do anomaly detection on money laundering, right? And I'm almost looking at where we're at today, where many of the parts of AI are starting to get commoditized. But over these 10 years, it sounds like there was a pretty significant run with a leading edge technology that wasn't very clear.
Absolutely, and I wish it would be a straight line and easy and clear cut, but it never. Especially when you take really disruptive technologies, it's never a straight line. It's never easy. NetVision was on the verge of bankruptcy, as many other companies. And I haven't mentioned a few other companies that they build, like Skyvision, when we brought internet connectivity to over 50 countries in Africa and the Middle East, etc. So let me quickly sort of talk about the process that brought me to theta array, because it's interesting. So I took a company, it was a defense company, or intelligence company, and working with sort of the best intelligence agencies in the world. And the idea was to help intelligence agencies, secret services, etc., to catch bad guys by analyzing the data that they connect. And it was a turnaround. When I came, the company was losing money and was not growing very fast. And after a year, it became a very nice success. And I remember I met with heads of different intelligence agencies, and they all told me, look, it was the challenge was used, or the challenge used to be how we collect the data. It's not the real challenge anymore, because there's so much data. It used to be phone calls. We just had to collect some phone calls, some camera footages, etc. Now we have Facebook and WhatsApp and Signal, etc. And GPS and BTS, which is base station, cellular base station, etc. We need something that will help us to analyze the data, and we just don't have enough people. And we need a solution. And I found that selling hardware with 30% gross margin is not a very interesting business, but selling algorithms with 98% gross margin is a much more interesting business, and it's much more powerful. So
when did you discover that?
It was about 13 years ago, 12 years ago.
Mm.
And then basically we switched the company, which was very easy because this company had amazing people who developed this type of algorithms and they were underappreciated. So suddenly we're selling those solutions that allow governments to very quickly identify bad guys, catch them, and we sell the company. And then I tell myself, look, this thing, I'm not sure that it was even called AI as we know it today.
Yeah.
This thing is the future. When machines will be able to think like human beings or human analysts, this is probably becoming the future. So I started actively look for solutions. I spent days, weeks in universities speaking with various professors.
Really?
I had a feeling, guys, everybody told me, look, this type of technology, it's true that intelligence forces use it, but they all take it from the universities. And I was very privileged to meet Professor Averbuch from Tel Aviv University, ex-Columbia University, who introduced me to an ex-IBM, introduced me to Professor Koifman from Yale University. And they were working on technologies that allow what today everybody understands and calls LLM, but basically to build systems that will allow machines to teach themselves. I don't want to bore our viewers, but some people call it unsupervised machine learning.
Yeah. So you actually came to these two professors and you said, listen, I have this experience where I've built solutions to catch bad guys, and the more time I spend on it, I realize that software rather than hardware is actually the key to unlocking a lot of these insights. And what are you working on that could fit better solutions for this? Was that sort of the dynamic?
That was the dynamic, yeah. In this case, they all told me, look, we actually build a company. And, we developed this technology to analyze medical data to help cure cancer, etc., which obviously, it's a totally different path. It was very difficult. And then I say maybe we should use it, for to identify cybersecurity attacks on critical infrastructure, etc. I became intrigued. And, they were looking for a founding CEO. I was looking for founders. You remember, I don't invent ideas by myself. I just find great people with great ideas. So I joined them. And it was an amazing run. By the way, like any new technology, the chase or the work to find the right product market fit wasn't easy. When you have amazing technology, especially if the technology can do everything, and AI is something that can do everything, forces you to really find what's your focus, what's your bullseye, what's your sweet spot. Because as a startup, you cannot do everything, and I think everybody needs to realize that maybe the first approach will be not necessarily the most effective one. For example, in Theta Ray, initially, when I've met these professors, I said, I need to do a validation. Is it true technology? It sounds too good to be true. 2013, 2014 is exactly the year that OpenAI was established. We didn't know it at that time. Now we know. Nobody knew OpenAI was established. And everybody thought that technology is crazy. So I decided to ask people that I know. And we also came with an idea that maybe we can identify cybersecurity threats in areas that it's impossible to use solutions like firewalls, etc. So I was very lucky to have the CISO of General Electric being my friend. And I said, in General Electric, you have the largest number of Nobel laureates. You have amazing research department. Can you tell me if you heard about this technology or these professors? And he told me, look, Mark, not only we heard about them, you should come. And, it was somewhere in Virginia. We couldn't find flights. So it took 3 flights to get there. Sitting at the rearest seats in the airplane, getting there, having 15 minutes meeting. And after that meeting, GE said that they will invest a significant amount of money in the company.
Wow.
And the use case today, it's not secret, was very interesting. So some people probably still remember Stuxnet, which is allegedly, according to the foreign press, as you know, we always have to say, was a virus that affected, allegedly, centrifuges that were
The
enriching
speed of
uranium, the speed of the centrifuges, doing it very smart. So the speed went up, the centrifuges didn't work, but the command and control center still showed the same information. It's like putting, it's like Ocean 11. It's like putting, Steele's picture in front of the camera and then rubbing the vault. And this is impossible to identify using normal security solutions because firewalls will look for network traffic. Here, we don't see any change in network traffic. What you see is a change of speed, velocity, temperature, etc. And of course, the goal wasn't to help Iranians to protect themselves. The goal was to help companies like Aramco that were later attacked by systems that were based on the technology of Stuxnet, and they were GE customers. It was very successful. And then General Electric introduced us to Singapore Airlines because, what GE does is big engines, airline engines. And Singapore Airlines checked this technology. It was very successful as well. And that's where the point of truth comes. Because you see that the technology is amazing. It really helps to solve the problems. But one thing is missing. How severe is a real problem in the real world? Now, how many nuclear facilities, Michael, you heard about being hacked? Maybe one, right?
Yeah.
How many airplanes really were affected by cybersecurity attacks? 0, which is good. So we have an amazing technology.
That we know of.
Great investors, great customers. That is one off, exactly. And then we had to go through a very tedious process, sometimes even painful process, because especially the founders, when they build a company, they have a certain vision. And although the technology is the best in class, the vision of who we're gonna serve is not necessarily what they feel is the right direction. But luckily for me, they trusted me. It's a great team. We found that actually protecting financial institutions and helping them to catch bad guys was the right solution. We're talking about it.
That's a huge shift.
Yes.
Right? It's a huge shift. Talk to me about it. So you're sitting with the founders. They have a certain vision. Part of it is also, part of what I wanted to touch on also, I'm very curious, but there's a part of coming up with the idea that is a big driver for entrepreneurs, right? I mean, I'm looking at different entrepreneurs who are founders of different companies. Sometimes it's a problem that they really care about that's coming from within. Some history in their life that leads them to this problem. And so that obviously has an impact on the customers you want to serve, which problem you want to solve, and not just the technology that you're building. How did you make that transition successfully? Because obviously looking backwards, it was a big success and still is. But how did it happen in real time?
It's a very good observation, because most of the people think that what you should do is to map all the various industries, to put the right parameters, to check and to do some Excel file analysis, and find what's the right solution. And by the way, it's true. You need to do this exercise, but it starts with you looking at yourself. And you're absolutely right. This is not an Excel file. This is founders that came with a vision, and this is me coming with a vision. So first, we should be all honest with ourselves and saying, look, maybe we made a mistake. Maybe there is something. Maybe the world has changed. This book, Who Moved My Cheese? Maybe the cheese has moved. So it starts with looking inside. Sun Tzu, one of those great strategists that wrote The Art of War. He said, when you don't know yourself and your enemy, you will definitely lose. When you only know your enemy but don't know yourself, you might not lose. But only when you know yourself and the enemy, you will win. So looking at yourself was extremely important, or at ourselves. So first we realized that. And the question asked us is, what's our passion? Like, what's the why? Why we are here? Are we here to prove that we can protect nuclear facilities? Or are we here because we want to unleash the power of AI to make a world a better place? And only when we understood that our goal is, to solve global problems that are huge problems using AI, and to do it in a way that is impossible to do just with people, then we could start the work of identifying what's the solution. So obviously we didn't want to look at small solutions, small problems. We said, okay, so what are the big problems? And then it was different. Then it was like nuclear facilities was one, operational efficiency was second. Can we do what they call manufacturing 4.0 was another one. Healthcare was another one. And one of them was money laundering. And we did analysis, and then of course it comes to the right analysis as well. So the why is extremely important. You can't start without it, but once you have an answer to why you do it, you need to find the answer of to the how we do it and what's the right thing we need to do. And obviously we found that the world of financial transactions is totally changing. Banks used to be with physical branches. You used to come there. Used to fill those forms, show your real ID, and then open an account. And it's not that it was impossible to create 10,000 fake accounts, but you had to find 10,000 people to create 10,000 fake IDs. It was a hassle. It wasn't easy. And now when banks became digital, some of them without branches, there are fintechs and everything can be done remotely, we understood that the world is changing. Suddenly, if you want to create 10,000 fake accounts, and then each account will make millions of fake transactions, suddenly you can do it with the press of a button. So that's how we basically felt that financial institutions is the right area for us. We also found that being a startup, you also want to make sure that it's not an NGO or it's not a non-profit. So you need to make money. You need to make sure that you provide nice return on investment for your investors. So we said, look, where is the money? Who can pay us? And obviously banks is was the right direction. I remember I came to General Electric, to the board member, and I said, look, we sort of think that we should move from manufacturing to financial institutions. Will you support me? He said, definitely. I will support you, Mark. You're making the right decision. You need to do what's right for the company. We, as investors, are very happy with your decision. Although, obviously, we love your technology and we would love to use it for GE, but we totally understand. And I remember somebody asked him, why do you support Mark in his decision to move from GE to financial institutions? And he said, in this famous movie about the gangsters, when they ask, why do you rob banks? And the answer was, because that's where the money is. So I remember he's telling, I support Mark because financial institutions that's where the money is.
Did you have a background in financial institutions before that?
Zero.
In fintech and cybersecurity for banks.
I understood how money is moving because I really understood telecommunication, and it's very similar. Obviously, cybersecurity is similar everywhere. I definitely understood the financial institutions' point of view on cybersecurity. I would say maybe differently because I started as a hacker. I definitely understood the potential of financial institutions for what they call black hat hackers, because at the end of the day, you can hack systems just for a pleasure of being a hacker, or you can hack the systems to steal some money. So I could definitely understand that point of view, but I was never a banker, didn't understand how banking systems work, what's the ecosystem, which is exciting. Every company I move to a different area, I love it. At the end of the day, my strong belief is that human beings are human beings. They build companies, they have the same processes. Obviously, we had to replace almost the entire sort of sales team of the company, because people that speak with financial institutions speak different language. But I love it. It's part of the challenge.
It almost sounds like you get almost excited by this idea that there is now a shift that needs to happen, and it looks nearly impossible. And I guess many entrepreneurs would look at it and say, "Oh, wow, that's that's terrifying. It's scary. It's going to be so hard." You look at it and say, "Let's do it. Let's get excited."
Yeah,
about it.
It's so funny when I tell people, shift happens. They tell me, why you smile?
Shift happens.
Shift happens. Yeah, I love it.
I'm adopting that.
Yeah.
So what were the industries that you moved from? So walk me through these different pillars. So we had the telecommunication piece right at the beginning, right, which came out of DARPANET and your experience in the IDF, where the last decade was all about money laundering, AI, and financial institutions. Walk me through these different pillars.
Yeah. So, first I started being a hacker. I loved it. And the idea was to crack, to understand how these systems work.
Yeah.
I was never interested in hacking, to achieve a financial gain. It was mainly to understand, how we can crack those systems. And of course, we'll not talk about the world of defense, but obviously,
Right.
you need to understand how systems work. And then when I joined NetVision, I'm excited about this idea of telecommunication. I'm also excited about the challenges telecommunication creates. So what really makes me excited is to understand that the world is changing, to
Yeah.
understand the opportunities and understand the threats. So I'm building the internet. Nobody in Israel had internet before, and then we faced the challenges. So the first challenge was, of course, legislation. There were incumbents. It was illegal to do internet in Israel. I had to understand how to work with the government to do the legislation. By the way, since then, I'm a big fan of doing the right legislation. So I participated in, legalizing cybersecurity, both defensive and offensive. Now I'm really excited about regulation in the world of AI. We can talk about it. But anyway, I understand that there are huge opportunities, but there are also threats. I'm a hacker. By the way, if people will Google the internet, I think one of the first vulnerabilities in Microsoft Explorer Windows 95, look how
Wow.
published, is something that I was one of the authors or finders,
Wow.
which was really, really cool. That time Microsoft will pay you some money if you found something really cool. And then I find myself building the, even before Checkpoint, the first firewall of the Israeli National Bank. We call it Gatekeeper, etc. So I immediately understand that there are two directions. One is cybersecurity and one is the growth of the internet. And many cybersecurity companies that are now in Israel grew out of NetVision cybersecurity department. And we did it just to help our customers become more safe. And then, of course, I discovered the world of e-commerce, which becomes really exciting, because how do you take business models that were proven in the real world and move them to the internet? I remember people told me that it's a new economy. And, being a kid, I said, no, it's actually not a new economy. If you have a lousy business model in the real world, you can't just move to the internet and make it a great business model.
Right.
You need a business model. And it's cool because suddenly you understand that the virtual world and the digital world and the real world are sort of connected, and it's the same.
You mean in terms of consumer behavior, it's the same? The way that people...
Consumer behavior, business practices, you can't lose, you need to make money. And if you go to the internet, you still need to make money.
Right.
And you can find different ways. You can finance yourself by creating eyeballs. You can finance yourself by doing sort of cross-financing. You can build Google and give email for free, but then you get revenues from advertising, etc.
Yeah.
So it was really, really cool. And then it's growing, and then suddenly there is a realization that internet is not just for browsing. It's actually can replace existing telecommunication systems like voice over IP. So suddenly we build this company called Delta 3 with millions of consumers. And you can see a real impact that you make on the world. Like when we build internet, obviously you can see like that people suddenly can communicate with each other. You can communicate with your doctor and get information very fast. And then we do voice over IP, and suddenly you see a person somewhere in Pakistan that would like to make a phone call to his beloved, and the cost is $8, which is huge amount in Pakistan. Suddenly they can do it for like $0.50, which was extremely
Wow.
low price. And then, you see that you can move video over the internet. And then suddenly we realize that people can feel close to each other. And then 9/11 happens. And most of the telecommunication cables were under the World Trade Center. So suddenly the city of New York is disconnected from the telecommunication system. But
Really?
Yeah, and
I wasn't aware that happened.
Yeah, and Delta 3 headquarters were in New York and 75 Broad Street. And internet went through some other place called 60 Hudson Street, different type of cables. And suddenly we see that we can allow people in Manhattan to to sort of communicate with the beloved ones all around the world and see if everything is okay.
Wow.
Tell them, ask them, report. Unfortunately, sometimes bad news as well. So you see a real impact. And then, of course, telecommunication market collapse. And one of the companies that I was helping, again, great founders that came with a great idea, let's use satellite communication, etc., told me, look, Mark, you should join us to help us. And then it's a totally different business. I've never seen a satellite in my life.
Wow.
They came with all those terms that today I know how to pronounce, like EIRP, etc. Trust me, nobody knows. And suddenly I tried to understand like what's the business model behind satellite communication. And then you realize that it's basically a real estate business. You have 360 parking places all around the world. And then you need to put satellites in those places. If you don't do it and keep it emptied, and after 3 years, suddenly IETF or ITU or whatever, the entity will take it back. Suddenly you discover there is a thing that's called extraterrestrial law. So you need to understand the legislation of extraterrestrial law. And then, of course, we made a mistake because we started to work very hard in Eastern Europe. And then we realized that the real market is in Africa. I've never been to Africa, and I need to go there. And eventually it became a great success. And suddenly you discover, and maybe one story that, unless you have a question that I can tell you.
No, please.
So suddenly, and it's a very profitable business eventually because there's no internet connectivity. And suddenly you do something that did not happen before. It's totally disruptive. You bypass telcos, you bypass, unreasonable prices that they charge. And suddenly, using a satellite, you can land your internet anywhere in Africa and in the Middle East. And also satellites are extremely cheap because, 2000, the world collapsed, telecommunication investments were overhyped. And I remember I came to South Africa, and we're meeting customers, and some of them comes and gives me this model of a village, of an African village, a clay model. And I ask him, like, what's that, And he says, look, I want to tell you a story. So we are your customers. And his and his wife were very senior. She was a very senior malaria researcher in Europe, and they made quite a large amount of money by investing in various businesses. They didn't have any kids. And I said, look, we built this place in Africa that treats malaria for kids. Now, I don't know if you know, but malaria is one of those diseases that underserved because it's mainly in Africa. So there was not enough money, and unfortunately, pharmaceutical companies will not invest a lot of money to create
curable.
It's curable, but
a market failure.
Exactly, it's market failure. So they said, look, we want to do it, and they built this beautiful village in not far away from South Africa, and mothers from all around Africa brought their kids to this place. Sometimes it meant traveling over weeks. And then they basically will take a blood sample of the kid, send it to World Health Organization. Once every 2 weeks, there will be a plane that will land and collect all the samples. And then 2 weeks later, they will get an answer. And some kids could survive it, some kids not. Because I'm not a doctor, but probably there are different types of malaria. And they said, look, I just wanted to tell you that you gave us this internet connectivity. We got a donation, which is basically a machine that allows us to do blood samples on the fly, convert it to digital data. We send it to World Health Organization, and we get answers within 24 hours. So the kids whose life you saved prepare this model for you. And then he gave me some pictures of the kids. I still cherish it. I can show in my plane. And then suddenly you understand that those cool technologies really make a world a better place. And I always tell this story, and it's that's where I understood that, with this great power of identifying new technologies and making investors very happy, you also have great responsibility, which is to make sure that those technologies serve people and make their lives better.
I mean, it all comes back to communication. it all comes back to, right? I mean, it sounds like the different things you've been a part of, and what you're touching on is this ability to communicate better, to communicate more effectively.
Yeah, it's communication, but I would say if it's maybe more important than that, it was all about data. Basically what happened here, communication is just a tool. But what happened here is that they could send medical data to World Health Organization and get data back that will tell them what type of cure should be used. It took me time to understand that what I thought is telecommunication, basically not my passion. My passion is data, is access to data, is democratization of data. For example, one of the things that happened is that we connected Congo to internet connectivity. And then suddenly all those people who do the sort of blood diamonds excavation, etc. Suddenly they understood the value of the stones they're finding. Suddenly people in places like Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania understood what should be the real prices of rice that they're buying or selling.
Yeah.
So bringing data, and by the way, even in Vision, what makes me exciting is that suddenly people in Israel could get access to all the data that is in New York. So if you ask me one thing, what's common to everything we do? And by the way, everything that Clarity does or any other company, it's allow people to analyze data, to get access to data, to get insights and wisdom.
Right.
And to use the data for their benefits.
I mean, it almost feels like we were in this phase in society now, or in humanity really, where by unlocking the layers of communication from an infrastructure level, we've now unlocked the dissemination of information and data. But now we've realized, wow, we have so much of this data that now we're lacking the tools, or we have an opportunity to analyze it in much more meaningful ways than we have.
Exactly. But I think we're moving from a sort of information revolution or data revolution to a wisdom revolution.
Wisdom revolution.
Yeah, to the real insights revolution.
Right. I mean, I think that and that's practically what your vision with the founders of ThreadArray, right? When it comes to money laundering, identifying traces of where perhaps human trafficking is taking place, and being able to create this unsupervised learning mechanism, which almost, I remember you said in one of your talks, is meant to mimic the subconscious part of the human brain, right? You have the frontal cortex, but then you have the subconscious, where what you said was that's where the magic happens, and you're trying to
it's great that you remember it and you've seen those TEDx talks. Yeah. So now everybody understands that there is this thing that they called AI, and it's working.
Of course.
4 or 5 years ago, and by the way, the fact that you identified it 10 years ago, it's amazing, because most of the people just couldn't believe that it might happen.
Lucky, I was born to the right family, I guess. It was
those
were my Shabbat dinners.
Somebody told me that luck is when preparedness when opportunity meets readiness. So
luck is when opportunity meets readiness.
Yeah, so maybe you were ready because you were born, as you said, to the right family, but you were also open enough to choose the unexpected opportunities. Because I'm sure that many people are born in the right place, but they just miss opportunities because they're not open enough to get it and embrace it. But it was difficult. And like, how to explain people something that seems like an intuition.
Right.
And then, of course, it's if you think about what AI is doing, and we can again jump from one place to another. LLM is basically computers teaching themselves. By the way, in Tether, we did something we called LTM, which is large transaction model, but it's the same. By the way, people forget that when you send a kid to teach himself or herself, it's not good enough. You always need to give some sort of external influence.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so this is cool. So people watching this podcast.
Yes.
Now, I will not look at the camera as I usually do when I get sort of a TV show, but ask our listeners, ask yourself now, ChatGPT, do you know what P means in ChatGPT? I will not ask you this question. Everybody knows that G is generative, right? Many people who are sort of close to mathematics know that the GPT, like T, means transformer. But when you ask people, and go ask people in your company what P means, 99.9% of the people will not remember what does it mean. So people who listen to us, ask yourself, do you remember what P is? People will say progressive, performance, whatever, but it's not. It's totally counterintuitive. So GPT is generative, pre-trained transformer. And the idea is that you need to train AI. You need human beings and then later machines to train AI to sort of, steer it to the right direction.
Mhm.
Now, it's like a kid. You're absolutely right. It's like unconscious part of our brain. When you send a kid to a street and the kid teaches itself, yes, he or she can become a great leader, but she can also become a criminal, an addict. That's why we need great education. That's what we need, parents and teachers and educators, to help our kids to become what they really have the potential to become. That's why AI is not good enough. That's why what they call unsupervised machine learning, which is system that teaches themselves, still needs somebody that will pre-train them. And this is the magic.
So we're going to talk a lot about the future of AI and where we're heading to, and there's a lot to unpack there. But before we get there, I'm curious. You have 3 daughters.
Yeah.
You're a family man. You love life.
I love life.
You love life. You love your family. You love your friends. Every time I see you, I the energy that you exude is that of very much communal. Your communication is very human. So I'm sure that you've given a ton of thought to how do you raise your kids and what you teach them and what type of world you want them to see through their own eyes. Because like you said, there's the information, but then it's how do you analyze it? And I constantly think to myself is, we can have the same situation happen to us, but we will perceive it in totally different ways based on the history we have, based on the way we see the world, or what things go through your mind as you recall, raising your kids, or what were really important things to you that they take with them?
So I will start at the beginning. When I first discovered that my wife is pregnant, I was hysterical. I tried to prepare myself, so I was looking for a manual. And then I found that when you get a new kid, nature doesn't give you a user manual, which is crazy. Like, in our world, you're in mine, we have this term, I hope it's okay for this podcast, which is called RTFM, read the manual. And suddenly I see kids coming without the manual, so I started read all those books, etc. And then you discover that every kid is different. So I thought, what's the 1 or 2 things that I want them to take? And if you ask all my daughters, they will tell you that there are 2 slogans that are sort of in our family. And then recently we brought a 3rd one. So first one is everything is possible. Or there's no such thing as impossible. As long as you work hard and you really willing to put the right efforts to make it happen. And the second one, never give up. Never ever give up, like Winston Churchill
Never
said.
give up, never ever give up.
Never give up, never ever give up. This is something that they will tell you, and they will tell you about their grandmother who died at the age of 103, that she was German, and then she was in Latvia, and then she was sent by Russians to Siberia, and she survived, and raised her kids, and she was investing till the last day of her life. She was telling me which shares to invest. And she will tell you, she was one of the strongest women I've ever seen. And she's a role model for my daughters, even those, my little one that didn't meet her. And she would always say, never give up, never ever give up, like Winston Churchill and others. And the third one, which I recently discovered that is important as well to sort of balance, the ambition of everything is possible, never give up, is gratefulness. I think in all the religions, we have this idea of really gratitude, being grateful for what we have, and understanding that what we have for a reason, for a purpose. And we have responsibility to use it, to make our dreams come true. And if you're lucky enough, to make other dreams come true as well.
What type of leader are you?
There are so many definitions of a leader. The one that I love, and you're probably familiar with it, that the true leader is the one that creates leaders around them who achieve ever-expanding results for themselves and others. So I believe if you ask most of the people, they will say that I really care about the people around me. and I really care about the growth. I really want people around me to achieve results way beyond what they think is possible for them. If I had a conversation with the leadership team of ThetaRay that grew with me, the current CEO was my CRO for 2 years, and the CFO that now is heading very large part of the company was there for 7 years. And when I heard that without any intervention on my side, they produce amazing results, that makes me more happy than the amazing results I produced before.
Wow.
So that's the type of a leader. I believe that
Were you always like that? Always looking at, is that an idea that you had since the beginning, or did you develop that as a result of some experiences?
Oh, I would definitely I will totally the opposite. I was, the what they call the ginger, redhead, teacher's pet, always try to be the smartest in the room. And if somebody is smarter than me, I will feel threatened and I will fight. And people, I can say that most of the kids probably hated me in their hearts, and they never told me.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I've met Ruth Alon, who was my first true CEO. And I could see how powerful it can be to empower others.
Wow.
How much better results you can achieve. How, ego is important. We wouldn't be, successful if we wouldn't have ego. But suddenly, when you make everybody's ego bigger than yours, suddenly the success is easier. I found that one basic management trick that I use, which is always bring people that are much better than me, especially in the areas that are responsible for. And I always joke that in my case, and it's not very difficult, this is a winning formula. You bring amazing people that are much better than you. They produce amazing results. And that's why in all my companies I have or that I'm involved, I have equity, etc. Because, it's really great. I get great pleasure, and also financially it's great because amazing leaders create amazing companies, and if I have a small piece of that company, it makes it also financially very rewarding. But
that transition for you, you're transitioning from gingerhead, smartest in the room. I can see that. I can see you being that way, but you're not that way.
Thank you.
Was it just being empowered by Ruth? Were there other things that happened?
Oh yeah, no, I've done huge amount of educations. I could really early understood that this is an automatic pilot that is not very productive. When I was younger, really young, people used to call me a D9, which is a big tractor that basically clears I could achieve everything. I would be unstoppable. I would break all the barriers to achieve goals. And I was a doer. I was an achiever. I'm still. But I found that if you do it the blind way, if you do it all those big caterpillar tractors, etc., yes, you can achieve your results, but then you leave ruins behind you. And I could see it from my wife. I could see it from my kids. So then I've done all those, all those programs like the landmark education and joining YPO, which is Young Presidents Organization, and going to Harvard to study how to become a better leader. It's a constant work because my automatic pilot is, okay, there is a problem. I will wear my doer achiever hat. I will ruin all the barriers. I will remove all the mountings. I will achieve what's needed. And I don't care what's going on. And I have to stop myself and say, yeah, no, but it's a better way. There is not a forceful way. There's always a way to empower others. And I really practice it. I have to say that when I achieve something by empowering others, I have a great pleasure. When I achieve something by sort of using my power, the pleasure of achieving the result is it's nice, but it's much, much less pleasant than, seeing others achieving results.
Wow. No, that's very powerful because and it sounds like it's something that you're still practicing.
I'm still practicing. Probably I will have to do it till the last day of my life because it's not easy.
No way to rewire to just...
I wish, I wish there will be a way to rewire, but I guess there's big discussion, nature versus nurture.
Right.
Is it genetic? Is it education? I sort of less busy with this question. I just know that I have to work. By the way, it's not only, the leadership skills. Trust me, if I'll stop exercising, I will start eat more. What will happen? So yeah, there are things in life that I believe that we need to keep practicing and practicing and practicing. And
So what do you do? And this is perhaps something for me too. You're sitting in a situation where something happens, shift happens.
yeah,
Now you're at a position where you have you're getting into your doer mode because you're capable, because you're smart, because you're energetic, and you want to see things done. And maybe you even have a sense that if you just go and do it and forcefully, it'll get done faster than if you were to now stop. And what do you do at that moment? How do you catch yourself? How do you stop yourself?
so maybe just one thing I do before that moment, because I know that in that moment I will probably not see it. There's this expression, when you're inside the soap bubble, you can't see the soap bubble anymore. So I try to do before, because I know that at that particular point of time, I will be in my doer mode. I will not see
The
what's going
adrenaline
on.
will fly and you'll just be...
Exactly. I will just... And so before that, I actually enroll people that work with me, and I tell them, look, if you see that I'm jumping into this sort of state of mind, let me know. This sort of expression from the world of management: what you can't measure, you can't manage. So I ask them to be my gauges, to tell me, look, Mark, you're getting into I call it automatic pilot. You're getting into automatic pilot mode. Stop. Now, those people, I need to trust them that they will do it, and they need to trust me that although they, in many cases, report to me, I will thank them rather than being angry.
So you have an honest, authentic conversation with them and tell them, listen, this is something that I know about myself. It's not necessarily bad. In fact, it achieves good results, but we can achieve much better results if I'm aware of it.
Absolutely. I will definitely do it. And then they will tell me, look, Mark, you're in this situation. Now, of course, you have a choice. Sometimes I say, thank you for sharing. It is what it is. I'm still taking the driver's seat, and I will do it. And but at least it's a conscious choice. It's a conscious choice, exactly. And by the way, there are sometimes surprising effects to this. So sometimes I try to really gather information from everybody, etc. And these people will tell me, look, Mark, you ask for our honest opinion, just make the decision, and that's it. It's not a democracy. And I say, thank you for sharing, and then I make a decision. So sometimes, you can, if you don't have the right gauges, you can move to the other extreme, which is being, extremely democratic, ask for everybody's opinion, and then make a decision by committee. Some people told me that a camel is a horse designed by committee. So you don't want to get to that extreme as well. That's why also creating this partnership, teamwork with the people that work with you, and they can trust you and you can trust them, is so powerful.
Remarkable. Tell me a little bit about YPO, Landmark. You're spending a lot of time developing yourself, just like this example with the autopilot. You're a busy guy. You have a lot of things going on, but you still find the time to do this I guess self-development or personal professional work. But it also feels like you do it in community settings. You're not doing it alone.
I do both. So I try to do it alone. Unfortunately, leadership is something that you need to practice with others. You can't, it's like riding a bicycle. You can't learn leadership just by reading about leadership.
Right.
You need to practice it. And it's much easier to do it in...
Some people think they can learn, but...
Yeah, no, you can learn it, but then if you never practice it, you get all the right ideas, and then when
it stays on paper.
Exactly. When the rubber hits the road, suddenly you see that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You need to practice, you need to make mistakes. When I did the Landmark Forum, and some people probably have done it, it works on... It doesn't work on your understanding it. It works on you practicing it. Right. They always tell you, like, do you know how to lose weight? If not, I will tell you, just eat less, practice more, and exercise more, and it will work. And how many people know it, and or how to, that smoking is not good for your health, but the fact that it doesn't help you to quit smoking, or that there is this thing that you say to your beloved ones, and totally makes them crazy, and you still sometimes say it. So there is
It almost
more
feels
than
like
that.
sometimes knowing it is actually defies the purpose, because it gives you the solution that you're solving it, or you're
Exactly,
tackling it.
exactly. And I remember I come into this thing and I'm very analytic, so I try to understand it and understand nothing. After 2 days, I come to the leader, and it's called the forum leader. Tell him, look, I just wanted to let you know, I paid this money and I don't understand what you say. And if you won't explain me, at that time I was, remember, like a gingerhead, a much less pleasant person than today. And I said, look, like I'm really planning like to write a letter to Landmark, so I want my money back. And he said, you know what? Let me give you a promise. First of all, this is not about understanding. But I will give you a promise. You stay till the last day of this program, and you don't try to understand it. And then last day of the program, if you don't understand it, I will explain you how does it work. And if you are still not satisfied, you will get all the money back. What do I say? And I said, okay. And then eventually you've done it. Suddenly at a certain point of time, you just get it.
You get it.
And of course, I didn't believe it. So I found like a Harvard Business School of Management study about this technology that explains how it's working. I became more and more involved, understood it, etc. But it's really cool because suddenly I realized that even if I don't understand something, it might be working. So this was like a really painful moment for me to understand that being the smartest in the room doesn't really help me to create great relationships. By the way, then I found with my kids that, if my daughter doesn't set up her room, I can give you the best business explanation why it's so important. I can give you all the planning tools, how to plan, setting up her room. And I can use my best negotiation strategies that I learned how to do it. And then she will tell me, no.
Yeah.
And she's 3-year-old. And that's it. So
I love it.
You have to learn different skills to work with different people.
Yeah. And it's all about people at the end.
It's all about people.
It's all about relationships, and it's all about
absolutely.
A phrase that I really love that I keep hearing back with the people that I work with. If you want to run fast, run alone. If you want to run far, run with others.
Absolutely. I so much agree with you.
It's a difficult concept to really understand. It's easy to understand. It's a difficult concept to actually live by, when a big part of autopilot, I think, for some people, myself included, is to run fast. Mark, let's dive to the future. You're a futurist.
Sounds good. The future is bright.
Looking at your time with, right at the entrance of the Inter 10. And the entrance to the communication space, and then the data revolution, the wisdom revolution, and looking at being at the leading edge of technology and figuring out how is the world going to look later on. You've spent the last 10 years dealing with AI. What's really exciting to you about where we're headed? So what are we going to unlock?
I think I'm really privileged, to be very lucky. To be in this world of AI and at the right time in the right place. And by the way, when today people say AI, it's like generic. It's like saying 20 years ago we'll use software, or 10 years ago we'll use SaaS.
And isn't it amazing how fast we got to this point, that within practically 2 years we've commoditized this ambiguous term which effectively says super intelligence?
Absolutely.
It's insane.
Absolutely. And I think we all know, all those statistics, how much time it took us, telecommunication companies, to get to 1 billion users. And then how much time it took Facebook to get to 1 billion users. And then how much time it took OpenAI to get to 1 billion users. And I think that we haven't seen it yet. So first of all, about the magnitude of the change, I remember when I was building the first internet service provider in this region, I really could feel that the world of sort of on the verge of tectonic change. And it did happen. Think about it. Like Amazon didn't exist, Google didn't exist, Apple didn't exist, and maybe Apple did exist, but was a small company. And definitely non Facebook, Nvidia, like people didn't even think that anybody needs it. And suddenly we have this new world. Now there are many, many shifts. The SaaS movement and the e-commerce movement, etc. But I've never felt like I'm feeling today, which is really a tectonic change again. That time I was too young for my position. That's why I joined YPO. Today I feel that I have a little bit more experience, but this is a tectonic change, and I think that this change creates enormous opportunities. We started this conversation about entrepreneurship, and I strongly believe, and I think Sam Altman said it as well, the day where one entrepreneur can build $1 billion company, a unicorn, is not too far away. And the day when one person can build a decacorn company, which is $10 billion company, is also not far away. And I just spent a week in this beautiful castle in France with professors from all around the world discussing in a very intimate setting the future of AI. And then somebody said, is it true that the day where AI will be able to build, or a virtual entrepreneur will build a unicorn is not far away? And it was very interesting to ask this question.
I mean, I think that what he said in France and what Sam said, really, it's a depiction of the capability, right? That I mean, what is a unicorn? What is a decacorn? It's some mechanism, some technology that serves a business need and is able to do it very successful and at a very large scale. And it's sort of closing this loop. That's very, very hard to do. It's very hard to build the technology, very hard to understand the pain point, to build a business around it and the model, and to make it go around. And almost to me, I'm translating to saying, wow, we're going to be solving a lot of problems.
Absolutely. And, it's always solving problems and creating problems. It's like black and white, yin and yang, demons and angels. It depends from what what sides do you come. So let's quickly sort of uncover the history of AI and where it's going.
Right.
So AI, as you said, it's a generic term. Everybody's using it. I guess it's all started with sort of machines that could just follow the rules. We used to call it algorithms, or even before. You just build the software saying go left, go right, and the system is doing it. And then there was, let's call it like first generation, and then there was a second generation, more sophisticated models. You can do sort of what if analysis, and if something happens, you can change your behavior, and then you do, if this happened, that happens. Let's call it like the second generation. And then obviously there was what we might call today supervised machine learning. We can teach machines. If you see this picture, it's a cat. If you see this picture, it's a pedestrian. If you see this picture, it's a stop sign. And then obviously great companies, Mobileye, the Israeli one, and others, and Tesla, etc., started to do what they do. And then the sort of fourth generation, if you might, came, which is unsupervised machine learning. Basically, machines can teach themselves. And there is a big discussion, like what will be the fifth generation? Will it be machines that can teach themselves and create a soul, a subconscious, a belief, an ability not only to teach themselves, but actually to create some sort of self-awareness? It's a very good question, but we're actually coming very close to a place where machines can think, act, and behave very similar to human beings, which creates enormous opportunities, which also creates a lot of threats. I think we should discuss as well, because there will be a need for companies that will protect the world against those threats. And Clarity is a very good example, because I think that the threat to our identity is extremely important. So maybe just touch on that one. You know that in the United States, forfeiting money is a very, very bad behavior. Secret Service that protects the president also protects the US currency. So it just shows how important to make sure that the integrity of the money is, right? Like, it's probably the one of the worst affairs, just creating fake money.
Yeah.
But there are no real laws, or there are, but not as severe, that deal with faking human beings, faking our identities. Think about it. We more care about, historically, which is not true, but we shouldn't be this way, but we more care about fake money than we care about fake identities, fake behaviors, fake movies, deep fakes, etc. So I think this is really one of the examples of how this amazing advancement of AI, which creates a lot of opportunities, also creates threats. By the way, in my world, it's again opportunities.
Of course.
It creates opportunities to make it safer.
Yeah, I think that what we share as entrepreneurs, that we take threats and we translate that word immediately to opportunities.
Yeah, just to build on what you said, there's this beautiful expression that some people see problem in every opportunity, and we actually see an opportunity in every problem.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I love that distinction. What is the threat in your eyes to faking identities? It's a big concept. How is that going to impact us humans, our being, our experience in the world?
So we sort of discussed about the fact that we are social creatures, social beings. We spoke about the fact that leadership is something that really you can't practice without speaking with other people. And I think what happens right now, that it really affects the most basic communication detection mechanism or communication enabling mechanisms that we develop. Because if you can create fake people, if you can create fake voices, how do you keep trust intact? So if you ask me, the biggest problem, which by the way is happening anyway, is the problem of trust. There's a beautiful book by Noah Harari that talks about, the sort of the origin of Homo sapiens. And, we were alone, and then we have tribes, and then we build cities, and then we build countries and continents, etc. And one of the very basic ingredients was trust. The reason why money is so important. And I wasn't sarcastic or cynical when I said that money integrity is more important than human integrity, or used to be more important than human integrity, because basically money means nothing. It's just we trust the government. We trust somebody that printed this piece of paper, that if we will show this piece of paper to somebody, we'll get the certain amount of gold that is in this piece of paper. And let's forget about the fact that there is no gold behind it anymore.
Of course.
But without the trust that this piece of something means something tangible for us,
right,
we have a big problem. And now, when we're starting to lose trust in the communication we're getting, we try to we're starting to lose trust in the leaders we are seeing. It's something that I think is really destabilizing. And with all the advancement of virtual technologies, whether it's Vision Pro by Apple or Quest by Oculus by Facebook, we're already starting to see a situation where we have video conferences with people who are literally virtual. And of course, we're all familiar with the current sort of world of criminal activities, when a banker was meeting with CEO and CFO, etc., and it all was deep fakes, and the quality of communication wasn't good enough, but it was like normal Zoom communication, and they told him what to do, and of course, he transferred the money because he did what you need to do as a banker. He did visual authentication of a person.
He trusts the other person who's talking to him, right?
Exactly. Now you have processes and procedures, and it says, look, you need to authenticate a person. You need to do audio authentication, and even better, if it's a transaction, you need to do visual authentication of a person. And that's what he did. Eventually, it was a deep fake. And this is without Apple Vision Pro. Now, when we create avatars that look like us, and we're more and more prone to those video conferences, and at a certain point of time, I ask a few of my friends that are in gaming companies, do you believe that kids that grow now will see the world of virtual reality as their own world? And they said, definitely, it's already happening.
Yeah.
Then ability to influence their behavior, ability to ruin the trust or abuse the trust becomes even more important.
Absolutely.
So if you ask me, there are many threats. And I think that one of the ways to make sure that the AI brings us the opportunities we want is to make sure that we build those digital guards, and we can talk about it more, that will allow us to sort of protect ourselves as a society against the rogue behavior of bad people using AI.
Yeah.
By the way, I know that you have a dog.
Yeah.
I have a dog. Dogs are never bad, right?
Yeah.
They can be trained to be bad. AI is never bad. It can be trained to be bad.
Mm-hmm.
But who is really bad? People are behind AI that train AI to be bad.
I mean, there's a lot of systems today that use biometrics, right? I think we've spent probably the last 20 years trying to move into a world of frictionless consumer experience, whether it's to open a bank account or to talk to each other on the phone, and treating biometrics as a source of trust signal for verifying the identity of the person you're talking to. And this is true for if I see a video of Joe Biden on television. So I don't even need them to write that it's Joe Biden. I see it and I trust it, and I trust that this is an authentic version of them. Similarly, in video conferences and banking systems and legal evidence in court. Do you think that that if you're looking from a security perspective, now that this is being breached, right? So we can no longer trust these identities that we're saying. Do you think that that different security organizations will sort of retract from taking biometrics as an approach, or do you think they will build additional guardrails, or they will have new creative things that we don't even know about?
Oh, I totally think that biometrics, as we know it, will be less and less effective. We'll need tools like Clarity to make sure that we can trust. We need the trust. Without the trust, the society will not survive. It's a fundamental. And by the way, let's look at money. We spoke about the money. So I don't know if you remember, but initially people used biometric tests to check the authenticity of money, and the best biometric process was, it was supposed to be gold. They will try to bite it. That's what happened in the medieval times, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, with the development of metals and genesis of printed money or paper money, this idea of let's try to bite it, which I would say a version of biometrics, didn't really work. And then we need something that we call certification authority.
Mm-hmm.
So there is like a picture of a king, and then it will be watermarks. And then it will be very expensive authentication mechanisms that will, a very expensive sort of authenticity or authentication mechanisms that will show us that the money is authentic, it's real, and it will be very difficult to forfeit. And then, of course, people created new ways to forfeit it. And, I think the biggest move when the dollar has been changed. Well, it's not the same old green dollar that it used to be, just because it became so easy to forfeit. And I think that then we moved to internet. And then initially it was very difficult to authenticate websites. How do you know that you're buying from Amazon or not? And then the idea of certificate authority came again. And then the company that called RSA was established by, algorithms developed by River Shamir and Adelman. And then you could literally authenticate, sign, certificate a website. And today you go, if somebody wants to see, you have this certificate for each and every website. You will see this symbol of, and people will call it HTTPS versus HTTP, but the same idea happened. And I think that now when we come into a new level of ability to fake identities, we still are human beings, and I think those proven practices of certificate authority are still needed. So obviously there will be a strong need for companies that can authenticate and tell you what is real and what is not. And people cannot trust what they see. They cannot trust what they hear. So they will have to trust small number of entities that will then in turn to authenticate other entities. And we all see it when we travel with our passports or IDs. We can't really trust all the passports that we see, but we can trust, the government, I hope, that will give the right passports to the right people. And then if we can authenticate the passport, then with high probability, we know that that person is that person.
Yeah.
And I think that's what will happen and already happening in the world of AI and identities and virtual human beings and non-virtual human beings.
You know, one of the questions that I think, I mean, there's different ways to protect banks from deepfakes. There's different ways to protect video conferencing from deepfakes, even social media. And I'm looking at the user, and I'm looking at my niece, I'm looking at my grandmother, who are going to be sitting and they're going to be experiencing this communication. So not the enterprise, right? The banker, yeah, I can train the banker to have a certain mechanisms with and trust more data than trust his own senses. But now I'm thinking about 9 billion people, and I'm looking at the large transformation that's happening. And it's not a 10-year, 20-year transformation. It's not like moving to the cloud, right? It's not like the rise of social media, which did take a little bit of time. We're talking about now this proliferation of synthetic media, which what it feels like and what the data shows us is that over a very, very short amount of time, we're going to have to retrain the way we look at media online, in the news, and our phone and video calls. And this is not just for the banker, but this is for every person in the world, because we put so much trust in our senses and what we see and hear. And all of a sudden, we're going to have to remember and train ourselves to be skeptic about our senses. And I'm really curious because you're very in tune with being and what it means to be human. And I'm curious to what you think, how you think people will manage that. Well, will there be mass skepticism? Will people be able to trust or constantly look at sort of the certificate that will be attached to the media? Will they care that there will be a certificate attached to the media?
So, I think that the good news about human beings that we will overcome it. And we can talk a little bit more in the future about the waves of threats and what happened with them. But just to answer your question, we as human beings develop capabilities to cope with things that can be a threat to our lives. I'm a half glass full person. So I believe that people will create abilities to do it, to be skeptical. I don't think, by the way, that it will be a responsibility of the 9 billion people to authenticate and identify and detect deepfakes. We're all familiar now that if somebody, you'll do it. Exactly. No, but this is a very important point. It's like, I think it's really a fundamental point about us being human beings.
It's a human right.
Exactly.
To know what reality is.
Exactly. And people today, if you will call somebody and tell him, look, your credit card is stolen, please give me your PIN. 99% of the people will understand that it's a scam. It wasn't that way in the past. When people will ask for your social security number, you will know that you're not supposed to give it. Or most of the people will know that you're not supposed to give it. If you will get an email saying that, they're very happy to tell you that you inherited $20 million and you just need to provide some information to get this money, most of the people will know that it's probably a scam. So there is definitely an education part of it. The good news for us, 9 billion people, is that companies like Clarity and banks and financial institutions and consumer companies like Amazon, etc., it will be their responsibility to help us to identify fakes. And by the way, if they will fail,
people won't use them.
Exactly.
Exactly. So there's market incentives.
Exactly. So it's a really survival for them to make sure that they use the right technology to keep serving those people. This is an evolution. Companies that will not be able to provide their customers the trust they need will just not survive. That's why I think it's very good news for companies like Clarity.
Of course.
It's also very good news for the 9 billion people that are using systems. At the end of the day, market dynamics will win, and companies that will be able to keep the trust of their consumers will not only will survive, but will thrive, and companies that will lose the trust will not be with us anymore.
And I think that, the more and more I spend time on this problem, it almost feels like this tectonic shift that you're explaining. And there's many tectonic shifts happening. There's AI in healthcare, there's AI in different infrastructure for analytics and in many different capacities. But when you look at trust and the way that AI impacts trust, it almost feels like the tectonic shift is that we're introducing this new expectation that until now was not intuitive, but it was almost like just a part of our senses and our frontal cortex being able to generate trust with our own thinking process. And now that is being hijacked. And so practically every organization and every group that comes in contact with a person, an identity, and transmits information, now you need this new layer of trust around it, which is a really, really, really big pillar. It's much bigger than specific technologies being able to detect deepfakes or put watermarks or provenance. We really are looking at a new human-computer interaction here, right?
Absolutely. And unfortunately, like in many of those cases, it will be a bit worse before it will be much better, because the systems are not there. And luckily, you do what you do at Clarity, so you prepare it for the future. But we will go through a phase where trust will be eroded. The deepfakes.
It's not good news for the 2024 elections.
It's not. We will not. You need to raise like $100 million immediately and to increase the pace of development. But you're absolutely right. It's not a good news for the coming elections. I hope that the deepfake will not really affect the elections, because the trust of the people will be eroded, which is in short term is a good thing. So at least they will not believe everything they see. Obviously, it should become better because people want trust. People need something they can trust.
Maybe we need to expedite deepfakes on the world so that we erode trust before the election, so that they don't believe what they see when it happens. Because the worst thing is that they'll believe the deepfakes that come up.
Absolutely right. And by the way, in a much smaller scale, let's look at money laundering, which is the world that I'm sort of helping. It started with the fact that people were laundering money and just just abusing the system. Al Capone was printing fake money. The term money laundering came from the fact that they were creating fake money, and then they literally need to launder it so it will look used. Okay, so this was the way to create fake money. This was like the origin.
Laundry machines?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why they say to launder money laundering. They were putting it in the laundry machines without the shampoo, without the cleaner, but just making it sort of spin. Yeah, this was the origin of deepfake. It's not the bad. AI didn't invent deepfake. This was a deepfake and that the systems that existed that time, which was basically tellers, couldn't identify it because the money didn't look new. It was like it looked used. That's how it all started.
Amazing.
Yeah, and then of course, banks understood that it's dangerous for them. Regulators stepped in as well, because sometimes banks were a little bit more greedy and actually enjoy the fact that there is situation of lack of trust, but they wanted to support some of their customers. And then of course, existing systems like Swift, etc., became not effective, and then AI stepped in, and then companies like Tetori started to grow and became very successful. And I think that's exactly what's happening right now, of course, on a much larger scale. So initially, those bad guys will be able to fool some of the people, and then companies like Clarity will develop tools to detect it in parallel. And I think it's extremely important. And as you know, I'm very active in the legislation part. We need very strong regulation that will also punish severely deepfakes creators, that will control the use of AI. And of course, like in any technology, some bad people will put their hands and will try to bypass the regulation, but the legislation is extremely important.
What leads you to believe that will be effective? So using regulation to deter bad actors, using technology. I understand, deterring bad actors from doing physical harm taking a gun and going on a shooting spree, that it's, the deterrent is that you're going to get caught physically. But behind technology, nobody knows you're a dog, right? Why do
Yeah.
you think that I guess regulation here will be effective?
So it's a very good question. And I think that first, regulation can be effective. And there is one ingredient that is needed, which is that everybody will understand that it's for better, it's for everybody's good. Think about it. The nuclear proliferation is working. Yes, you need cooperation of many countries. But today, if you will try to create nuclear weapons, you will have a problem. Money laundering, it's not perfect. It doesn't work everywhere, but it does work. It does work because people understand that countries should work with each other.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it will ruin the financial systems. By the way, what happened is that it started by as a regulation, but now even financial institutions understand that it's important. One of the examples I can bring from Twitter is hundreds, if not thousands, of girls that unfortunately was sold from Ukraine by bad guys. And by the way, thanks to the use of AI by bad guys, there was an SPV, a special vehicle,
Special purpose
vehicle company that was established for each and every girl. So it was
so girls being sold through
girls being sold. There were companies that were established. Each company was something like child relief program, etc.
Wow.
It's almost impossible to detect. Tether AI solution did detect it, and it's a famous story. Bank sees those transactions, stop them, report as they should using SAR, suspicious activity report. And then a few weeks later, Interpol came and said, look, you should stop those transactions because it's money laundering, it's child trafficking. And the bank said, look, good news that we actually didn't transfer the money. Now, obviously, money wasn't transferred, so girls were not shipped. And basically, we saved those girls. So it's a very good example where regulation started something that now is actually became a bon ton, became standard de facto. No CEO of the bank will now support, or fintech will now support bypassing sanctions or bypassing money laundering regulations, because in some cases it can be a great customer that just want to launder some money that they did by tax evasion. But in many cases, it can be terrorist funding, which is extremely illegal. It can be human trafficking, which nobody wants to do. It can be narco trafficking. So I think that the same situation, we human beings know how to create. Genetic cloning, I think it's a similar one. Again, we know that some countries don't follow the rules, etc. But I think that you need two ingredients. One is the willingness by the governments to create the right type of legislation, and of the nations and companies and people to cooperate with each other. And the second one is detection technologies.
Right.
And I think that...
And the implementation of detection technologies at scale.
Exactly. And the implementation at scale. And that's why it's important to have companies like Clarity, and it's important to have conversations like we have now with the European Union and the US President Act for AI and others.
I think the big challenge/opportunity that's presented to us in when it comes to regulation is that it's getting harder and harder to know the source. So even if you can detect the occurrence, because of the decentralized nature of the digital world and because of the sheer volume of things happening, it's very hard to trace back to the source. I imagine that in money laundering, a lot of times you can probably look back at, you at least know which account it came from and then try to have some signals there. But, I'm thinking through, people that are disseminating these bot farms and people that are going to create deep fakes out into the world. The ability to trace back to really where it came from is going to be really, really challenging. And I'm especially curious about how to crack the ability to take regulation and legislation to empower the pipes of information, to put the detection mechanisms there so that you can get as close to the source as possible, right? Because once the media has gone through several instances, it's kind of out in the wild. But as close as you can get to even the router of the Wi-Fi, and I think that it's really interesting that we as a society will start thinking of things we do in the digital spectrum similar to violence in the physical world, right? It's very clear that when somebody holds a gun in the street, there's a threat there. You don't think that of somebody who has a laptop yet, but I think we're getting there.
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned violence. I would claim that taking a teenage girl and doing deepfake with that sort of deepfake with presenting this teenage girl in a way that is not respectful. I would claim that in many cases on social media it can be much more painful than just a physical bullying. So I think we're already there, and we haven't even started being in the virtual world when we believe that this is an extension of our world. So kudos for making the world a better place, even for those teenage girls and boys that can be embarrassed and ashamed and bullied by using deep fake. And again, here I think we see how important is this combination of good technologies, great companies like yourself, and the right type of legislation.
Right. It's an ecosystem play.
Sorry?
It's an ecosystem
It's an
play.
ecosystem, absolutely. There will be more and more requirements for the right type of authentication and authorization. So today, if you can easily onboard yourself, people will have more strict requirements to onboard themselves. The transparency will have to be much more important. And today there are a lot of discussions about making the AI transparent, traceable, and explainable. People will not tolerate AI not being able to explain its own decisions. I strongly believe, and if people will Google my name, they will see that one of the first hackers that has been caught, his name is Analyzer. I was a key witness. And I remember when we had this conversation with FBI, the notion was that it's impossible to find somebody in this world where there are IP addresses and how can you detect this guy? And today everybody understands that that wasn't the situation. When you have an IP, you can always find in the logs of the routers when who got this IP address and which phone call made a connection. That time there were like modems, etc., and then you can trace it back and find what's going on. Then cryptocurrency, everybody said, yeah, and now using cryptocurrency and mixers, etc., you can't find whose this money is, etc. And again, now there are enough tools to see and get to the origin of that wallet. And even if you can't find who it is, you can put enough triggers and buffers and thresholds. So if somebody will use this wallet, and they will have to use the virtual wallet to get real money or create a transaction, you will catch it. So I'm optimistic. I think that there is no such thing as perfect crime. There is no such thing as total 1% anonymous. With the amount of data that is today, I think it's just a question of time. The systems will be developed. And, as they say, these bad guys will be able to run, but they cannot hide for forever.
Mark, before we end this amazing conversation, what are one or two key pieces of advice that you would give me?
Okay, so before doing it, let me just say something extremely important about AI, and then I will give you one or two pieces of advice. I wasn't ready, by the way. You didn't tell me that you will ask me, so I didn't prepare anything, but I think it will be the most authentic one. But first of all, let me tell you one thing that, just to summarize the AI piece, because many people come to me and say, look, Mark, you're in this world of AI. Don't you think that you ruin the world? You create something that will ruin us as humanity? And it's a very big question. And I thought about it. And I found that every time something new was created, something radical was created that changed the world, people had a lot of fears. When press was created, everybody was sure that that's the end of humanity because we don't need to use our brains anymore. We don't need to remember all those stories. So there will be no people anymore because everything, or knowledge, anymore because everything is printed. When telephone was created, that's the origin, let's call it the origin of telecommunication, people said, that's it. It's the end of the social life. It's the end of us human beings being social animals because we can just make a phone call. So why should we visit each other? When car was created, Hamish said, it will totally ruin family unit because suddenly you can go to a remote city and, Hamish will not allow the use of cars, at least they didn't. And when I built the first internet service provider here, everybody told me, look, the way your kids will speak with you will be totally different. So we created a world where we will not understand our kids. And by the way, everybody was right. My kids definitely use language that I'm not sure that I understand. But I also found that every new development, although it did create problems, it creates huge opportunities. And I think that to summarize what we said about deepfake and bad guys and why there's such a big need for companies like Clarity is AI is similar, but it's also different because AI can be easily used by bad guys as well. And they're already using it. They're already doing it. They don't follow any rules. They use it to create deepfakes. They use it to steal money. They use it to sell those poor girls that we mentioned. So in the world of AI, we have to develop AI. Mm-hmm. We have to use AI to create digital guards. And because we need to train AI, we can actually, and it's our obligation as a humanity to take AI, to train it to become our digital guards. And together, this man-machine cooperation, or AI, artificial intelligence and HI, human intelligence cooperation, is the only way for us to fight the bad guys. My experience shows that good guys always win. Maybe it's because there are more of us. And now you ask for one or two advices to give you. First, really, I learned to know you, to spend time with you. Just keep being who you are, being optimistic, unstoppable. I think what's I really love about you, you dare to make mistakes, and you are smart enough or wise enough to ask advices how to avoid those mistakes. Somebody told me that stupid people don't learn from their own mistakes. Smart people learn from their own mistakes, but really wise people learn from mistakes of others. So keep utilizing your ability to listen to people and learn from them to make a world much, much better place. And keep creating people around you, leaders like you, and create ever-expanding results. You're a true leader.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it, and I take with that the nature of optimism and the nature of listening and trying to understand, cover what is, continuously uncover what is known, and especially uncover what is unknown. And I think that what strikes me throughout every interaction we have, and especially in this conversation, it's always looking at the glass half full. I think it's the same sentiment of taking threats and turning them into opportunities and seeing opportunities in them. It's saying the disruptions that are happening, but saying it's getting better and we will overcome it, not because we're naively optimistic, but because we've done it before and we have great people doing it today. And even though you've built multiple extremely successful companies, you're still so active in what you do. And so, and that inspires me, seeing people that are so energized by pure, wanting to make both the world a better place, but also just the people around you better. And what you mentioned before about your leadership style, and one of the things that you truly care about is seeing others around you become better leaders themselves, and that gives you even bigger pleasure than succeeding on the task yourself. I think that really it does speak to the same nature of optimism and how you're tackling these larger problems. So, Mark, thank you so much for spending this time with me.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much.